Often, you make a dive, spend some time topside, and then plan your repetitive dive based on the no-stop limits your computer shows. But not always. Sometimes, you know how deep and long you want both dives to be, so instead you plan how long to wait between them. This is called finding a minimum surface interval. Imagine you and your buddy are diving on a wreck. Your first dive was to 18 meters, or 60 feet, for 40 minutes, and you plan to make a second to 15 meters, or 50 feet. You want to dive for 45 minutes, and based on experience, you know you have enough air to do that. Make a safety stop and surface with an adequate reserve. To stay well within limits, you agree your computer should show at least 50 minutes no-stop time before you start. So, how long do you have to wait after diving 18 meters or 60 feet for 40 minutes to have 50 minutes no-stop time at 15 meters or 50 feet? One way to find out is to simply scroll your no-stop limits periodically until your computer shows the time you want. This sounds imprecise, but as you gain experience, you get a feel for how much no-stop time you gain during surface intervals. A second way is to use your dive computer's plan mode. Not all computers have this feature, but with some, after a dive you can enter surface intervals and depths and it shows the no-stop times. See the manufacturer literature or your instructor about this feature. You can also use a dive planning app, the RDP table, or the ERDPML to find minimum surface intervals. These won't exactly match your dive computer, but it will give you a good approximation of how long you'll be at the surface. When planning, scroll your computer's no-stop times to confirm you have the time you want. The decompression models used in dive computers and tables are based on diving at sea level. You are under less pressure when you are higher up, so flying after diving and diving at altitude can increase decompression sickness risk. To address this, the dive medical community recommends waiting at least 12 hours before flying after a dive. If you make more than one dive or dive several days in a row, wait at least 18 hours. Flying after diving recommendations change periodically. Follow the current recommendations. You need to use altitude diving procedures for sites at 300 meters or 1,000 feet elevation or higher. You set some computers for altitude and some automatically adjust. See the literature for yours. With most dive tables, you use a special table that converts your actual depth to theoretical depth that adjusts for the pressure difference. Your instructor will help you with these options if you'll make your open water dives at altitude. You've learned that you want to stay warm to avoid hypothermia and to dive relaxed to avoid overexertion. Getting cold and strenuous activity may also increase decompression sickness risk. Although you want to avoid cold and strenuous dives, if you find yourself colder or working harder than expected, be even more conservative than usual. Using the RDP table or ERDPML, calculate cold or strenuous dives as 4 meters or 10 feet deeper than their actual depth. Safety stops may be especially prudent. If you accidentally exceed a no-stop limit, your computer will show emergency decompression stop depths and times. Don't ascend above the indicated stop depth. Your computer will show you when you can ascend to the surface or the next stop if you have more than one. Although it's important to complete emergency decompression stops, don't run out of air trying to do so. If you're low, complete as much of the stop as you can, but save enough air to surface and exit. After you're up, relax, breathe emergency oxygen if available, and monitor yourself for decompression sickness symptoms. Don't dive for at least 24 hours. Many dive computers will lock into an error mode for that long if you don't complete a required decompression stop. Lung overexpansion injuries and decompression sickness have the same first aid. So we don't worry about distinguishing between them when we help a diver. The dive community groups them both under the term decompression illness, or DCI. Follow the steps you learned in Section 3 for helping an unresponsive diver. Monitor the diver's breathing and give CPR as needed. Contact emergency medical care, including the local diver emergency service if there is one. Keep the diver lying down, breathing emergency oxygen. Lay an unresponsive, breathing diver left side down, head supported, like this. Give the diver aid until emergency care takes over. Nearly all DCI cases require putting the diver back under pressure and extended therapy in a recompression chamber. Don't delay first aid and getting the diver to treatment. The faster treatment begins, the lower the risk of permanent residual symptoms. Under pressure, nitrogen and oxygen have an intoxicating effect called gas narcosis. It's not directly harmful, but it can impair good judgment and coordination. The signs and symptoms include feeling intoxicated, loss of coordination, slowed thinking, slowed reactions, inappropriate laughter, depression, a false sense of security, a disregard for safety, and when under stress, anxiety and/or panic. Narcosis affects people differently, but most divers begin to notice it at depths approaching 30 meters or 100 feet. Being tired and the use of drugs and alcohol can make it noticeable even shallower. Diving in cool water, darkness or limited visibility seem to make it more noticeable, while diving experience seems to reduce its effects. Generally, narcosis isn't likely to be a significant issue on dives shallower than 30 meters or 100 feet. If you do experience it, though, ascend to a shallower depth. It usually passes quickly. During your open water dives, you'll practice navigating with an underwater compass. This basic skill helps you save air and know where you are in relation to your exit point throughout the dive. A standard compass looks like this. The north needle or indicator always points to magnetic north. The lubber line is always your travel direction. The bezel rotates so that you can set the index marks over the north needle, and the heading references allow you to record directions. Hold and swim with your compass like this. Level, with a lubber line aligned with your body center line. Look over the compass as you swim with it. For console-mounted compasses, hold it like this. To set it, point the lubber line in your desired travel direction and let the north needle settle. Then rotate the index marks over the needle. Now, keep the needle within the marks and the lubber line in line with your body as you swim. If you turn off course, the needle leaves the marks. Stop, turn back onto course, and then continue. While you navigate, your buddy maintains contact and watches the depth. To return on a reciprocal course, rotate the bezel 180 degrees and then turn until the needle's within the index marks. Now you're facing the way you came. Some compasses have 2 sets of index marks, so you don't have to reset the bezel. Just use the other set. A growing number of dive computers have electronic compasses. They operate similarly, but have different displays. See the manufacturer and your instructor about using yours if you have one. Throughout this course, you've learned about the limits you're responsible for staying within as a newly certified PADI open water diver. Let's summarize some of them. You were trained to a maximum depth of 18 meters or 60 feet, or the actual depth you've reached if shallower. With additional experience and training beyond the open water diver course, the maximum depth for recreational diving is 40 meters or 130 feet. You are also trained to dive in conditions as good as or better than those in which you train, within the no-stop limits of your dive computer or tables. You're qualified to participate in the PADI Advanced Open Water Diver course. discover local diving program, and many but not all PADI specialty diver courses. Ultimately, it is your responsibility to set your limits for each dive based upon your assessment of your skills, comfort level, and the dive conditions. One challenge new divers sometimes face is how to stay involved with diving. The dive community has found 3 things that will help you do this. First, involve yourself in social settings where you can meet other people to dive with. Second, go to different places to dive. And continue to learn by continuing your diver education. It's easy to meet friends to dive with. Start with your PADI resort or dive center. They usually have clubs and activities, so jump in and join the fun. Meet divers online with Scuba Earth and other social sites. Attend local dive shows and invite some of your non-diving friends to become divers. You also meet people through group dive travel. Your local dive operator likely organizes local and distant dive outings, as do dive clubs. With experience, you'll start planning individual trips too. Set training goals. What do you want to accomplish as a diver? Then, take dive courses that take you toward your goals and that interest you. This is another way to meet divers, and you can often package a course with dive travel. It's also been found that divers who invest in their scuba kit continuing diving and get more out of it. This isn't surprising. As you learned earlier, your own gear is the gear you prefer, adjusted for you, and suited to the diving you like. The purpose of the PADI system of diver education is to help you dive safely, but also to help you continue to enjoy diving. It provides a clear path with choices for growing in and enjoying diving in the ways and areas that you want. You may even already be thinking about one day becoming a PADI open water scuba instructor. By continuing your education with the PADI system, you learn new skills, make new diving friends, learn more about different kinds of equipment, and visit new places and dive sites. Talk to your instructor or dive operator about your interests, and visit PADI.com regularly for updates and additions to what the PADI system offers.